Hi, and welcome to the Joy of Tennis Teaching. Thanks as always for viewing these, and I appreciate the comments that I'm getting on a regular basis from so many of you. Uh, since I was a young boy, I was always fascinated by greatness. I was really into sports, and so my first exposure to greatness was the idea of great athletes. And I remember reading everything I could in terms of biographies of the great athletes or stories of the great teams in team sports. And I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in Massachusetts, so I was exposed to one of the greatest sports franchises in the history of athletics, the Boston Celtics. And particularly the greatest dynasty of all in sports was the 1960s Boston Celtics, led by the great Bill Russell, who passed away this week. Over the years, I've read a lot. I've read Russell's autobiography, I've read Red Auerbach's books, so I feel like I know a lot about Russell and the Celtics from that era. But the media coverage of Bill Russell's passing led me to understand even more what not only a great athlete but a great human being Bill Russell was. So we've lost another giant, but I hope it makes us all appreciate what's going on. Now, my fascination with greatness in later years has led me to explore more on the psychology of greatness and talent especially. Over the last 10 years or so, there have been some remarkable books written about talent and talent acquisition and whether talent really exists. One of the things I've said right from the beginning is I hope this channel will become a forum for learning and learning of all types. And there's many, many pathways to learning. And I hope we'll talk a lot about different ones. I mentioned podcasts a couple weeks ago. For me, the greatest pathway to learning, my greatest source of enjoyment, relaxation, and learning has always been reading books. And every few videos, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite books. And today I would like to start with, I hope you can see that. There we go. The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. The Talent Code is a very, very interesting book. Daniel Coyle approached this idea, the subtitle of this book, I think, sums it up well. It's Greatness Isn't Born, It's Grown. Here's how. And Daniel Coyle takes two pathways to discuss this. He goes around the world researching different talent hotbeds. Brazilian soccer. He goes to a small tennis academy outside of Moscow that produced an inordinate number of top women professionals on the WTA tour. He goes to a rural, very rustic music camp in upstate New York. And besides these talent hotbeds, he goes to some of the leading universities that are doing neurological studies that really explain how learning takes place. And he talks a lot about myelin and the myelinization of our learning. And I could go on and on about this book, but I'll just say that I highly, highly recommend it. I believe it's one of the best books out there in terms of understanding learning, learning acquisition, talent, greatness. It's a remarkable book. To me, for me personally, the number one takeaway from this book was the idea to not be afraid if your student is struggling a bit to learn. They actually talk about the neurological reasons for the scrunched up face when you're trying to learn something new and difficult. And as a tennis teacher, I wanted my students to be happy all the time. But I found out that you know, recognition of a mistake and that scrunched up face when trying to analyze and understand a mistake was an enormously positive sign that true learning was taking place. So that was, for me personally, the number one takeaway that I had from this book. Why should tennis coaches read this book? Well, I feel there's two reasons. The book opens up talking about deep practice and explaining how important practice is. That this author and authors of a number of other books that I've read really doubt the existence of talent at all. You know, the idea of prodigies and natural talent just doesn't exist, and they can explain in many ways why these prodigies end up becoming who they are. And most of the time it's because they grow up in an environment that fosters the kind of practice that leads to the development of talent. And then that talent grows into what's called greatness. So I think that for tennis coaches to understand the importance and the design of practice, this book is a great starter to get you to really focus in and understand on the role of practice. And the other thing is there's 3 chapters that discuss the role of coaches and how important coaches are in directing this talent acquisition process. So just to reiterate, if you're looking for a great book that's very well written and very easy to read, but remarkably packed with insight on talent development, greatness, the role of coaches, and the role of practice, once again, I would highly recommend the Talent Code by, The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. So that's this week's book review and recommendation. We'll talk about a lot more books in the coming weeks and months. Let's see, that's about it for today. Also in this video, I'd like to say a big thank you to Mary Ionescu. The 8 weeks that she's been here from Romania have been just a joy. So thank you, Mary. Take care, and thanks for enjoying the joy of tennis teaching.